Filipino dishes out there. It's a saucy dish made with soy sauce and vinegar, flavored with bay leaves, garlic, and peppercorn. Today I'm going to show you how to make the popular chicken adobo and the oh-so flavorful pork adobo. Here are the ingredients we'll need. People have asked what brand of soy sauce and vinegar I use. Honestly, I just use whatever Filipino brands that I find at my Asian grocery store. The important thing for me is that I'm using the Filipino brand because it adds to the authentic flavor of the dish. Let's start by making chicken adobo. First, in a pot, put 2 pounds of chicken. You can use any cut of the chicken you'd like. Today I'm using 2 thighs, 2 wings, and 2 legs. Then we'll add 6 cloves of garlic that's been roughly chopped, 1 tablespoon of peppercorns, 5 bay leaves, 6 tablespoons of soy sauce, 6 tablespoons of vinegar, and half a cup of water. Now some people put all of this in a container and let it marinate overnight, or in the fridge for a few hours. But if you're short on time like I usually am, this is what you can do. Let's cover it and put it on the stove. Put it on the stove and bring it up to high heat so it comes to a boil. Once it has come up to a boil, let's just make sure everything is incorporated and well combined. Now we can also add some more flavor, like a teaspoon of sugar. Let's let the chicken simmer on this side for 10 minutes. Now after 10 minutes, let's flip the chicken over. By letting the chicken simmer in the sauce now, we're allowing the flavors to develop into the chicken. It's taking the place of marinating it in the fridge for a while. Okay, after about 10 minutes, we're actually gonna go ahead and take out the chicken. And we'll take out the liquid from the pot as well. Now in your clean pot, go ahead and add some oil, and we're going to sear the outside of the chicken. Let's add 4 cloves of garlic. Then let's add our chicken. Then flip it over. After about 1 minute, we can add the sauce back. Now we're just going to let the sauce simmer and reduce a little bit. Now is also a good time to taste and see if it needs to be adjusted. If it's too salty, add more water. If it needs a little bit of flavor, add some salt. I'm going to add about half a cup more water and bring it up to a boil. And now it's perfect. This is our chicken adobo. Okay, so we just learned how to make the chicken adobo. Now let's learn how to make pork. It's all the same ingredients, but the steps are a little bit different since the pork needs a little bit more time to tenderize. To make pork adobo, let's start with 2 pounds of pork. You can use any cut of pork. I'm using pork belly. Pork belly is so flavorful. Then add 6 cloves of garlic, 5 bay leaves, 1 tablespoon of peppercorn, 6 tablespoons of soy sauce, 6 tablespoons of vinegar, and 2 cups of water. So you'll notice we added more soy sauce, vinegar, and water to the pork recipe because we need to let the pork simmer for longer. Again, you are welcome to let this marinate in the fridge for a few hours to let the flavors really develop. Even letting it sit out on the counter for about 15 minutes before you start cooking it will really help the flavors develop into the pork. After about 15 minutes of letting it sit on the counter to marinate a little bit, I'm going to put it on high heat and cover it so it can come to a boil. Now that it has come to a simmer, I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar and stir it all together. The sugar helps balance out the flavor of the vinegar and soy sauce. Now the pork is going to take about 45 minutes to an hour to tenderize. I'm going to turn down the heat to medium or medium-high and let it simmer, and I'll check on it in 45 minutes. You'll see that the sauce will have also reduced. So it's been about 45 minutes and this is what our pork adobo looks like. You can see that the sauce has reduced. And I want to do two things now. First, let's taste the sauce. We can add some water if it's salty, or if it needs some more flavor, add some more salt. I'm gonna add just maybe half a cup more water, which is fine because it still has some time to reduce anyway. Make sure to stir it. And I also just want to check to see how tender the meat is. To do that, let's use a fork. We're going to poke one of the pieces of meat. If it goes in easily, it means it's really tender. If you're meeting some resistance, it means it could still use a little bit more time. I think it could use maybe 10 to 15 more minutes, so I'm gonna let it simmer. And there we go. Our pork adobo is done. Okay, so let's go ahead and try our two different adobos. Here we have our chicken adobo, and here we have our pork adobo. Remember, for both, we use the same ingredients, but the difference with the chicken was that we let it simmer for a little bit, then we seared the outside of the chicken, then we let it simmer some more until the sauce reduced. Then with the pork adobo, we just put everything in the pot, let it simmer for 45 minutes to an hour until the sauce reduced, and now it's this yummy, flavorful dish. And of course, we have to eat it with rice. Let's start with our chicken adobo. I got a chicken thigh here. And you have to pour the sauce over the rice. The sauce is so flavorful. You can taste all of the garlic, and the bay leaves add a nice deep flavor in there. The chicken is so tender and the flavor goes really deep into the meat. So good. Honestly, on weeknights when I'm short on time, my go-to meal is adobo for my family. It is so easy to whip up and I always have the ingredients in my pantry. Now let's try the pork adobo. I have a new plate of rice. One of the differences with pork adobo is that it's a lot oilier because of the fat from the pork, but also it makes it very flavorful. Let's give it a taste. You know, chicken adobo is good, but I think my favorite is pork adobo. The fat from the pork just makes it so flavorful. Of course, you don't want to eat it too often, especially if you're trying to watch your cholesterol, but having it once in a while is such a great treat. Be careful with the peppercorns though, it's tough when you bite into one. Here are some fun facts about adobo. The cooking method of adobo dates back to pre-colonial times, when indigenous cuisine used vinegar and salt to preserve food in the tropical climate. Then in the 1500s, Spanish colonizers called the dish adobo, which means marinade. Nowadays, adobo is considered to be one of the national dishes of the Philippines, and there are countless variations all throughout the country. Some prefer to add sugar for a sweeter adobo. Others add coconut milk for a creamier adobo. Others use vegetables or hard-boiled eggs instead of meat. And some modern recipes shred up the adobo and turn them into tacos. Adobo is so popular in the Philippines that some local snacks like nuts, chips, and noodle soups are adobo flavor. Lastly, adobo is the go-to dish for traveling because it doesn't need refrigeration and the vinegar keeps bacteria away. Also, March 15th, 2007 is Adobo Day. It's the day when the word adobo was added to the Oxford Dictionary. To this day, adobo is an iconic symbol of Philippine cuisine. So which is your favorite kind of adobo? Pork, chicken, or another kind? Tell me in the comments. Paalam! Let's make Filipino barbecue. Filipino barbecue is a staple at Filipino parties. It is the perfect mix of sweet and saltiness with a tender meat that's usually pork but could also be chicken. Here are the ingredients we'll need. We'll be using about 2 pounds of pork shoulder butt, 1 head of garlic, 1 lemon or calamansi, half a cup of soy sauce, a 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1 bottle of banana ketchup, and 1 can or bottle of Sprite. Okay, first let me show you how I cut the pork. First, I cut it into big strips, and then I cut those strips into 1-inch pieces. You can trim off the fat if there's too much, but I actually like leaving some fat because it gives it extra flavor. And there we go. After all the meat has been cut, it should look like this. Now let's go ahead and prep our garlic. We're gonna use 1 whole head of it. On the same cutting board, I'm gonna go ahead and just cut my lemon in half. That way we can squeeze it right into the marinade. And there we go. Okay, so now that we have everything prepped, let's go ahead and put it all together. So this is the cut up pork, and I'm gonna go ahead and start with the garlic. So this was 1 whole head of garlic. We'll just put it in there. We can go ahead and squeeze the whole lemon as well. If you have calamansi, go ahead and use that. I do not have calamansi. I could probably find calamansi concentrate or like frozen calamansi, but I didn't have any, so I'm just gonna use lemon. Then we're going to use 1/2 cup of soy sauce, just put that right in there. Then 1/3 cup of brown sugar. Then a can of Sprite. So a can has a little bit less than a whole bottle, so I won't be using the whole thing. The Sprite gives it a lemony flavor, but also it tenderizes the meat. You could also use ginger ale if you can't find Sprite or if you happen to have ginger ale at home already. Then the last thing is 1/2 cup of banana ketchup. If you've never had banana ketchup before, it's sweeter than tomato ketchup, and it has this like gelatinous or like a gelatin consistency. So if you can see, it's hard to get out. So what I usually do is I take a butter knife, I stick it in there, and I loosen it up. And we only need 1/2 cup of this for now. So you might be wondering what banana ketchup is exactly. So yes, it's made of banana with some vinegar and sugar and spices. And it was made in the Philippines during World War II when there was a shortage of tomato ketchup. And of course, the Philippines has a lot of banana. So they invented it there as a substitute. And it's usually used in Filipino spaghetti. Also can be used on hot dogs and things like that. And it's not actually this bright red naturally. Red food coloring is just put in there to make it look like tomato ketchup. It takes a lot of work to get banana ketchup out of its jar. So 1/2 cup of banana ketchup. So now this is what it should look like after all of the ingredients have been added to the marinade. I'm gonna go ahead and take off my ring, and we're gonna massage everything into the meat, make sure it's fully incorporated. Now after everything has been incorporated, you can go ahead and cover it. Then I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the fridge for 4 to 6 hours. If you can keep it in the fridge overnight, the flavors will really develop. Here's a tip for your banana skewers. You can go ahead and soak the banana skewers in the water to make sure it doesn't burn while it's grilling. Now let's make the basting sauce. This is the sauce that we'll be putting on the meat as it's grilling. First, we're going to need 1/3 cup of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of soy sauce and 1/2 cup of banana ketchup, which is basically the rest of the bottle we were using. Now once all of those ingredients have been put together, you can just mix it to combine. Alrighty, so it's been about 4 hours. Again, it will taste better if it's overnight. Here is my meat, it was in the fridge, and we're gonna go ahead and start skewering. Remember, we put the barbecue skewers in water so that they would not burn when we grill them. And let me show you how I skewer. Okay, so this is what the meat looks like. What we're gonna do is just skewer them right through the middle, and the Sprite hopefully will have tenderized it a little bit. Looks like I can fit 4 on this one. And there we go. So it really helps when the pieces are the same size. You get the idea. When everything is kind of the same size, it's going to cook a little bit easier and at the same time. So I'm gonna put this one away and make more just like that. And there we go. So all of the meat has been put on skewers. I made about 12, but again, you can make as many as you want depending on how many pieces of meat are on your skewer. So let's go ahead and grill them. And of course, we can't have Filipino barbecue without rice, so let's go ahead and mix some rice. And this is what it will look like when you're grilling it. Remember to use the baste that we made. It had the brown sugar, the soy sauce, and the rest of the banana ketchup. So as you flip it, add the base and it keeps it saucy and moist and flavorful. And of course, it's perfect served with white rice. Okay, let's go ahead and eat. I'm so excited. I wish you guys could smell this. Oh, so good. So you can see on the barbecue, it's saucy and the meat is cooked just perfectly. Let's give it a taste. The brown sugar and the banana ketchup add a sweetness which balance out the saltiness of the soy sauce. So it's so good. And then there's just a brightness from the lemon as well. I hope you get a chance to try this. If you make this for a party, I know for sure it's gonna be a hit. It always is at our parties. So how do you make your Filipino barbecue? Tell me in the comments. And if you happen to use this recipe, let me know. Paalam! Let's make lumpia. It's the Filipino version of a fried spring roll. This popular dish is always a hit at Filipino gatherings. Here are the ingredients we'll need. First, add 1 pound of ground pork to a large bowl. Next, finely chop 1 cup of carrots and add it to the mixing bowl. I like using a food processor for this. Next, finely chop 1 cup of onions. Then half a cup of parsley, 4 cloves of garlic, and 3 scallions. I throw everything into the food processor, but you can also chop it by hand. Next, add all of the chopped veggies into the mixing bowl. Then add 2 eggs to combine everything. Season with salt and pepper, and sometimes I like to add other flavorings. Mix everything really well, but don't overmix it. Now in a separate bowl, beat 2 eggs together. This will serve as the glue to hold the lumpia wrapper. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to roll the lumpia. The first way is to fill the entire length of the wrapper with meat. Take about 2 tablespoons of the filling and spread it evenly from side to side. Make sure you don't add too much filling so the lumpia can be small and crispy. Then, I use a cooking brush to spread the egg wash all over the lumpia wrapper while I'm rolling it. Keep doing this until you get to the end of the wrapper. Here it is again. Take about 2 tablespoons of the filling, then spread it evenly from one side of the spring roll wrapper to the other. Then brush some egg wash all over the spring roll wrapper while you're rolling it. As you roll the wrapper, make sure to keep it tight. This will make sure that it fries evenly and crispy. The other way to fold the lumpia is by keeping the filling in the middle. Notice how my wrapper now is more like a diamond shape? I use less of the filling and fold the sides inward. to close off the edges of the lumpia. Again, brush the egg wash all over the spring roll wrapper to keep it in place. Some people only add the egg wash at the end of the wrapper, but I actually like putting the egg wash on the wrapper as I roll because I think it makes it crispier when we fry it. Here it is again. Use about 1.5 tablespoons of the filling and spread it evenly in the center of the spring roll wrapper. Now, as you roll the lumpia, fold the edges inward so that none of the meat is exposed. Then seal everything together with the egg wash and keep rolling. Here are some fun facts about lumpia. Did you know that it comes from the Chinese culture? When immigrants came from southern China, they brought many aspects of their cuisine. In fact, the Hokkien phrase lumpia means soft pastry. And perhaps originally, lumpia was soft. But over time in the Filipino culture, the recipe has evolved, and now it's a crispy, delicious spring roll. Also, there are many different types of lumpia. The one we're making today is lumpia Shanghai, which is a crispy, meaty lumpia. Then there's also lumpiang sariwa, which has a veggie filling with a soft crepe-like wrapper. Also, there's Turon, which is considered to be a sweet lumpia. It's a plantain that's wrapped and fried in a spring roll wrapper. And there's so many more types of lumpia out there. When you're done wrapping all the lumpia, you can cut them into smaller pieces. I like cutting mine into fourths, so that they're about 2 to 3 inches big. Once they're all cut, this is the perfect time to put the lumpia in Ziploc bags so you can freeze them and eat them at a later time. It's always great having lumpia in the freezer. Next, fry the lumpia in 350-degree oil. Try not to overcrowd the pot. Fry them for about 5 minutes until they get golden brown. Then drain off any excess oil. And here's our lumpia with a side of sweet chili sauce. Let's taste our lumpia. The perfect lumpia should be crispy on the outside with a flavorful filling on the inside. And yes, I'm double dipping because this whole plate is mine. I'm sure if you make this lumpia recipe for your next gathering, it will definitely be a hit because these lumpia are so addicting. So how do you make your lumpia? Tell me in the comments. Paalam!
Let's make pancit! We'll be making pancit Canton with the thicker noodles and pancit bihon with thin noodles. Pancit is a staple at all Filipino gatherings, and I'll show you that it's easy to make at home. The hardest thing about making pancit actually is just prepping all of the ingredients, so let's go ahead and cut these up. Let's start with the cabbage. I'm just going to chop it up into small pieces. Take out the core first. Just like that. Next are the carrots. I just want them to be in really thin pieces, so like a julienne cut. And this is what the carrots should look like when they're done. Next are the snow peas. All we have to do is take off the root here. Next, let's just chop up an onion. Half of it will go in the pancit Canton, half will go in the pancit bihon. Next is garlic. Next are the Chinese sausage. I like to cut it at a diagonal. Next are the fish balls. I like to cut in half. And there we go. Now all of our ingredients have been prepped. Now in a pot of boiling water, we're going to go ahead and blanch our vegetables. And then we're going to take them out. By briefly cooking them, it will help keep their color, and then we will add them to the noodles at the end. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take out the veggies now. You could also put them in an ice bath to really stop the cooking. Now in the pan, I am going to saute the fish balls and the sausage. When the fish balls and the sausages are browned, we can take it out. Now let's make our Pancit Canton. I put in some oil and I'm going to add half of our onion and half of our garlic. Next, I'm going to add a tablespoon of soy sauce, a tablespoon of oyster sauce, half of a chicken bouillon cube, and 1.5 cups of water. Bring it to a boil so that the chicken cube will dissolve. Now that your sauce has come to a boil, it's a good time to taste. If it's too salty, add more water. If it needs more flavor, add some soy sauce. This is actually perfect, so I'm not gonna add anything else. Now I'm going to put in the Canton noodles. I'm going to add a little bit more water since the noodles aren't cooked yet. Okay, so now the noodles are almost done. I'm going to add half of our veggie mix. Remember, this was the blanched carrots and snow peas and cabbage. We're only adding half because the other half is gonna go into the Pancit bihon. And we're gonna add half of our sausage and fish ball mixture as well. Now we're gonna mix everything together with the noodles. And there we go, this is our Pancit Canton. Now let's make Pancit bihon. It's basically the same steps, we're just gonna use different noodles. So let's saute onion and garlic. Add 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce, half a cube of chicken bouillon, 1.5 cups of water. Once the sauce has come to a boil, go ahead and give it a taste. If it's too salty, add water. If it needs more flavor, add some soy sauce. This is tasting good, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the noodles. This is the bihon noodles, so you can see it's thinner, so it's not gonna take as long to cook. Since these noodles do not take a long time, I'm gonna go ahead and add the veggies and the meat now. And that is Pancit bihon. Let's go ahead and give this a taste. Let's start with the Pancit Canton. This is the one with the thicker noodles. Personally, I prefer the Pancit Canton. It's just a little bit heartier, and this is what we always had at special occasions, on birthdays or holidays. Okay, I got a little bit of the sausage, the fish ball, and all of the veggies. And I have some lemon, and I'm going to add some parsley for garnish and some freshness. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a taste. First, let me squeeze some lemon. I like the lemon because it brightens up the flavor a little bit. If you have calamansi, that would be perfect. I do not have calamansi today. The soy sauce and oyster sauce bring a little saltiness, but it's balanced out by the subtle taste of the noodles. And I love the freshness of the vegetables. I'm so glad we blanched them because they're not overcooked and they still have a good crunch. So here are some fun facts about pancit. Did you know that it came from the Chinese culture? Historically, Southern Chinese immigrants migrated to the Philippines and they brought with them their cuisine, some of their language, and their culture. Pancit was actually considered to be a fast food. You could find vendors selling it on the street and people would buy it and eat it while they're on the go. Nowadays, pancit is expected to be served at any Filipino gathering. For birthdays in particular, it's considered to be good luck to eat pancit so that you can have a long life. There are also many different kinds of pancit. Today we learned how to make Pancit Canton and Pancit bihon, But there's also pancit nomi, pancit sotanghon, and so many more. And some people mix the pancit bihon and canton together. So good. Now let's try the bihon. Now for our bihon, we used all of the same ingredients, just a different type of noodle. But usually for bihon, it has shrimp, it can have green beans, or chicken. But I wanted to show you that you can use the same ingredients for both. So let's get some noodles. Again, let's add some parsley and a squeeze of lemon. Okay, let's give it a taste. Again, this is the pancit bihon, the thinner noodles. I like the thinner noodles because it really soaks up all of the sauce and the flavor in there. The pancit canton, of course, has the thicker noodles, and the noodles themselves have a very subtle taste. Whereas for the thinner noodles, you just taste the yummy chicken bouillon that we put in there and the soy sauce and the oyster sauce. So it really soaks up all that flavor. So actually, you know, I think it's a tie. I like both. I hope you get a chance to make pancit sometime. Whether it's the pancit canton with the thicker noodles or the pancit bihon with the thinner noodles, pancit is the perfect thing to serve at any special occasion or just for dinner. Paalam! Let's make mango float. Also known as an icebox cake, this frozen treat is made by layering graham crackers, sweetened whipped cream, and mangoes. And it's popularly served at Filipino parties. Here are the ingredients we'll need. First, let's cut some mangoes. I like to cut them into cubes, and to do this, I cut off both sides from the inner bone. Then I cut slits vertically and horizontally to make square cuts in the mangoes. Next, I use a spoon to scoop out all the pieces into a bowl. And don't forget to get the pieces of the mango around the bone as well. Now I actually have a secret ingredient that I add to the fresh mango. It's a can of diced mangoes in syrup. I know, hear me out on this one though. These canned mangoes add a nice sweetness. And sometimes in winter when I can't find any sweet mangoes at the store, I use 2 cans of these mangoes for this dessert. And it turns out perfectly every time. Next, let's make our sweetened whipped cream. You can certainly make your own whipped cream, but if you're short on time like I usually am, you can just use store-bought. Let's add half a cup of sweetened condensed milk and lightly fold it in until it's all mixed together. Next, in our serving container, let's put down a layer of graham crackers. Then a layer of whipped cream. Be sure to spread it all the way to the edges. Next, we'll add a layer of mangoes. For some reason, I always start by making an X with the mangoes and then fill in the edges. Guess it helps me spread it out evenly. On top of the mangoes, I like to add a little bit of the mango syrup. This adds great flavor and a nice texture when it freezes. Then we'll start another layer of graham crackers. And a layer of whipped cream. And some more mangoes and syrup. Then one final layer of graham crackers. And of course whipped cream again. Now for the top layer, I actually start with the mango syrup first. Then a layer of crushed graham crackers. And I carefully spread out the mangoes to make it look nice. Some people cut the mangoes into strips for this top layer instead of cubes, and that looks nice too. Here are some fun facts about the Philippine mango. The mango is the national fruit of the Philippines. The mango was introduced to the country by Spanish colonizers in the 16th century. And mango trees can be found in many people's backyards throughout the country. In fact, the Philippines is the 10th largest producer of mangoes in the world. And the mango specifically is the 3rd most exported fruit in the Philippines after bananas and pineapple. Also in 1995, the Philippine mango was recognized as the world's sweetest mango by the Guinness Book of World Records. And here's the final look after all the layers have been assembled.
Next, we'll cover it and place it in the freezer for at least 4 hours. Overnight is even better. Then once the dessert has been frozen, this is what it will look like. Honestly, I think mine could have been frozen for a little bit longer. The whipped cream was still a little bit soft, but you get the idea. I'm sure it'll still taste delicious. Let's try our mango float. The perfect mango float is sweet from the mangoes, crunchy from the graham crackers, and smooth from the frozen whipped cream. I love how the graham crackers get a little soft from the cream, and the mango syrup adds another level of mango flavor. I seriously think mango float is my favorite Filipino dessert of all time. So, have you had mango float before? If you have, leave me a mango emoji in the comments. Paalam! Let's make leche flan. Leche flan is a popular Filipino dessert. It's a custard with a sweet layer of caramel at the bottom, and it's often served at Filipino parties. Here are the ingredients we'll need. In a small pot, let's start by combining 1 cup of sugar and 3/4 cup of water. Then let's bring it up to a boil. Once it has come up to a boil, it's important that we do not stir it. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit and let it simmer until it starts to turn brown. If you stir it, it might crystallize, which happens to me a lot, and then you'll have to start over again. In our baking pan, I'm just going to lightly spray it with some oil. And now this is what our caramel sauce looks like. So this is the layer that's going to be at the bottom of the leche flan. Let's go ahead and put it in our baking pan. After about 10 minutes, the caramel will harden. You can certainly let it boil a little bit longer if you like a darker caramel layer, but the light brown is fine for me. Now we'll need 10 egg yolks, so let's separate some eggs. Now in a bigger bowl, let's combine 1 can of evaporated milk and 1 can of condensed milk, the 10 egg yolks, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then let's mix it all together. The mixture should be nice and smooth once everything has been mixed together. Let's go ahead and add our milk mixture. Ideally, if you want a picture-perfect leche flan, you would strain out these egg pieces so that the custard will be really smooth. But I don't mind, so I usually just keep it in there. Next, we're going to cover it with some tin foil. Now in my oven, I already have an empty pan. Now I'm going to put my leche flan pan inside of it. And then I'm going to add some boiling water that goes up to the side of the leche flan pan. Whoops, be very careful when you do this. The water around the pan will serve as a steamer. We'll let it sit in the oven at 370 degrees for 45 minutes. Okay, after 45 minutes, I went ahead and took out the leche flan from the oven, and now I'm going to put it in the fridge for at least 8 hours, or overnight is better, so that the custard can set. Okay, so it is the very next day. I pulled out my leche flan that has been sitting in the fridge overnight. Let's see what it looks like. And it's okay if it looks like that. That's just from where the leche flan was touching the tin foil. We will flip it over anyway, so this is technically going to be the bottom. Now, in order to take it out, I just take a knife and run it around the sides of the pan. Then I take another plate, the serving plate, put it on top, and then we're going to flip it. Then I like to give it a few taps to make it all come down. Okay, here we go, moment of truth. Oh, perfect, look at that. The syrup is all around the leche flan. Remember, that is from the caramel that we made at the beginning, and the custard flan has solidified nicely.
Let's try our leche flan. The flan is so smooth and creamy, and it's just subtly sweet from the caramel layer we put on top.
Here are some fun facts about leche flan. Originally, leche flan was a Spanish dessert, and in Spanish, leche means milk and flan means custard. The difference between Filipino leche flan and Spanish leche flan is that Filipino flan has more egg yolks. That's because back in the day when Spanish colonizers were building churches throughout the Philippines, they used egg whites in the concrete. So, the leftover egg yolks were then used by the rest of the community in dishes like leche flan. Then, when the US occupied the Philippines, they introduced canned goods, like evaporated and condensed milk, both of which are essential ingredients in leche flan. Typically, leche flan is made in oval baking dishes called llanera, and leche flan is often served as a topping for other desserts like halo-halo.
It's so good. Make sure to give the flan enough time to sit in the refrigerator so that it solidifies. There were times when I pulled out my leche flan too early because I was too excited and it wasn't solidified. The perfect leche flan should be smooth and creamy and soft enough to melt on your tongue. I hope you get a chance to try this leche flan recipe. Anytime I make it for one of my parties, I get lots of compliments. So have you had leche flan before? If you have, tell me in the comments. Paalam! Let's make halo-halo. Halo-halo is a popular Filipino dessert. It has layers of different ingredients from beans to jellies. It's mixed with condensed milk and shaved ice. And it's topped with other sweet treats like leche flan and ice cream. It's such a refreshing dessert, especially on hot summer days. Here are the ingredients we'll need. If you're lucky, you may be able to find these ingredients in jars at your Asian grocery store. They're usually a Filipino brand, and you can see that it's made in the Philippines. And some of them already have all of the ingredients you'll need in one container. If you can't find these ingredients at your Asian grocery store, you might want to look online. Making halo-halo is so easy. All you have to do is layer up all the ingredients that you want in it. Honestly, the hardest part is just finding all of the ingredients. First, I'm going to start with my coconut jellies. They come in many different colors. Usually they're white, but these are red. I've also seen them in green. These were my favorite part as a kid. I'm just putting a couple scoops so that I have enough room for the other ingredients, but again, you can add as much as you want. Next, I'm going to add some beans. This might sound a little interesting to you to have beans in a dessert, but it really goes well with it. These are purple beans, or black beans, I guess. And then some yellow or white beans. Again, I just added a couple scoops of each. Next, I have some green palm nuts in sugar. These again can come in many different colors. I've seen them in white and red. These happen to be green. And it's just whatever food dye that they used. Next are coconut strings. In Tagalog, it's makapuno. And they are just stringy pieces of coconut. Literally, makapuno means a filler. So these are like a filler ingredient. I also have some jackfruit. These were just from a can. So this is what it looks like so far. You can see all of the different colors and ingredients. Sometimes I like to add ube jam or ube halaya. Just a small scoop. So these are all the ingredients that I have. And I only want to fill it up halfway so that there's enough room for all the ice that I want to add. Now I'm just going to shave some ice. Okay, I just wanted to show you these last couple ingredients up close. You can see I have some ice in here. I want to add just a little bit more because you'll see when we add the evaporated milk, the ice will go down. We can even add more at the end. So on top of that, let's add a piece of leche flan, which, by the way, if you would like to watch the recipe on how to make leche flan, it's right here. And then on this side, I'm going to add a scoop of ube ice cream. Then we're going to pour some condensed milk on top. If you like it a little bit milkier, add more. If you want it icier, add less. And there's our halo-halo. So literally in Tagalog, halo means mix. So halo-halo means mix. To eat halo-halo, you have to mix it up first. I usually just go up and down to get the ice incorporated. And then I go all around and I pick up all the ingredients from the bottom, again, just to get everything mixed together. The ube ice cream makes it a nice purple color and you can see all of the ingredients in there. Let's give it a taste. Look at this big bite. It has everything in it.
Here are some fun facts about halo-halo. It originated from the Japanese culture. In Japan, there's a popular dessert made with shaved ice, flavored syrup, and condensed milk. One difference between the Filipino version and the original Japanese dessert is that the Japanese version has the ice at the bottom of the cup, whereas the Filipino version has the ice on the top. Spanish versions of halo-halo have sweet corn and banana, and other Filipino versions of halo-halo incorporate ingredients like sweet potato, tapioca pearls, and fresh fruits such as watermelon and durian. Nowadays, halo-halo is served all around the Philippines, from fast food restaurants to high-end dining locations, and even in neighborhoods by street food vendors. Halo-halo is undoubtedly considered to be an iconic Filipino dessert.
So each bite is different depending on what ingredient you get. Generally, it's very sweet because of all the ice cream in there and the syrup that everything is stored in. When you eat the coconut jellies, it's just like a nice little pop of sweetness. And the beans add a nice little softness to it as well. And the evaporated milk that we added makes it nice and milky and sweet. Do you drink as you go? I do sometimes. Again, the great thing about halo-halo is you can add anything you want in it. Some people like to top it off with pinipig or like some crunchy Rice Krispies. Some people add banana if they have it. And if you don't like any of the ingredients, then just don't add it. You can see why halo-halo is so popular in the Philippines, where it can get really hot. The ice and the ice cream are just so refreshing. Whenever I go to the Philippines and I see halo-halo on a menu, I always order it because the ingredients are always so fresh. So have you had halo-halo before? What's your favorite part of it? Tell me in the comments. Paalam! Let's make Filipino spaghetti. Filipino spaghetti is known for being sweet. It has a meaty sauce with ground beef and red hot dogs, and it's a popular dish at many Filipino parties. Here are the ingredients we'll need.
Okay, let's start by preparing our ingredients. First, let's chop up a red bell pepper. Then we'll chop 4 cloves of garlic. We'll chop up a small onion. Then we're gonna cut up 8 red hot dogs. The redder the better. And I cut them at a pretty heavy angle. Now in a pot with some oil, let's cook our hot dogs. Once the hot dogs have gotten some color, we can take it out.
And now let's saute our onion and garlic. Then let's add our bell pepper. Now we can make some room in our pot, and then let's add some ground beef. I have this tool that I use anytime I'm cooking with ground beef, and it really helps break it up. If the beef made a lot of oil, I like to take some of it out at this point. Now we can mix everything together and then add 2 cups of tomato sauce and half a cup of tomato paste, then 1 cup of banana ketchup and 1 cup of beef broth. Stir it all together and let it come to a simmer. We'll also add a teaspoon of sugar. We can always add more later. Then we'll just cover it and let the sauce thicken and reduce. In a separate pot, I'm going to go ahead and cook the spaghetti noodles according to the package directions. After about 30 minutes of simmering on medium heat, this is what the spaghetti sauce looks like. You can see that the sauce has reduced. Now it's nice and thick. Let's take a minute to taste it. If it's too sweet or salty, add some water. If it needs some more flavor, add some salt. If you want it a little sweeter, you can add some more sugar. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, and now I'm going to add the hot dogs again. Let the hot dogs warm through one more time, and then it'll be ready to serve. Let's give it a taste. Add some cheddar cheese. The sauce is so flavorful and sweet from the banana ketchup, and it's really hearty with all the hot dogs and beef that we added. It's so good. It's just the right amount of sweetness for me. If you like it sweeter, you can certainly add more sugar, but the banana ketchup itself is already pretty sweet. This brings me back to my childhood when I would order Filipino spaghetti at the restaurants in the Philippines. I also get nostalgic when I think about having Filipino spaghetti at any of my birthday parties.
Here are some fun facts about Filipino spaghetti. Spaghetti and hot dogs were both introduced to the Philippines in the 1940s when American troops occupied the country. And due to a tomato shortage, a Filipino inventor created banana ketchup, which became a staple condiment to Filipino food and an essential sweet ingredient in Filipino spaghetti. Some people use other sweeteners in their Filipino spaghetti, like condensed milk, syrup, or even soda. Nowadays, it's common to see Filipino spaghetti on the menu of many fast food restaurants in the Philippines, like Jollibee, McDonald's, and KFC. Lastly, Filipino spaghetti is often served at special occasions, especially children's birthday parties.
So have you had Filipino spaghetti before? If you have, tell me in the comments. Paalam! Let's make turon! Turon is a popular Filipino dessert that's made with banana or plantain, sometimes jackfruit. It's wrapped in a spring roll wrapper and fried until it's golden brown. Here are the ingredients we'll need. Let's start by cutting up some plantains. The riper, the better. Wrapping turon is very easy. Just take your spring roll wrapper, make it into a diamond, then put a piece of the plantain, then fold up one corner, fold the other corners in, and then roll it up. Then use some water to seal off the end. And there you go. Let me show you again. Get your wrapper, put a piece of plantain, fold up, fold the sides in, and then roll it, and then seal it with some water. Very easy. It's almost like rolling lumpia, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the video on how to make lumpia, you can watch it right here. To make the turon extra special, you can even add some jackfruit. This is just another type of fruit. It's very sweet. I usually get the canned jackfruit from my Asian grocery store. And then you just roll it with the plantain. Sometimes if my plantain aren't ripe enough, I will dip the plantain in some sugar before putting it in the spring roll wrapper. That will help make it sweeter. Here are some fun facts about turon. Turon was historically created from a surplus of crops at banana farms. And it's a popular street food in the Philippines because it's easy to eat while you're on the go. People usually eat it as a merienda or snack during the day, or as a dessert after a meal. Lastly, turon is also known as lumpiang saging, or a banana lumpia. And there we go, now we can fry them. Now let's fry them in a pot of oil at 350 degrees. After they've been frying for about 7 minutes, they will turn golden brown like this and they will be ready to come out. Let's try our turon. The plantain inside gets so soft and sweet, and it pairs so nicely with the fried spring roll wrapper. Here's some of my favorite ways to eat turon. I like eating it plain when it's freshly made. Or I like eating it covered in caramel sauce. The caramel really adds a nice sweetness that pairs well with the plantain, and it's not too sweet. Or I like drizzling some Nutella on top. Or I like eating it with a bowl of ice cream. The creamy ice cream goes so well with the cooked plantain. So what's your favorite way to eat turon? Tell me in the comments. Paalam! Let's make pandesal. Pandesal is a popular Filipino bread. It's usually eaten in the mornings, and people like to dip it in their coffee or hot chocolate, or they eat it with butter, or they eat it with other tasty fillings, which I'll show you at the end of the video. Here are the ingredients we'll need. In our mixing bowl, let's go ahead and put 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Then add 2 teaspoons of instant yeast, a 1/3 cup of sugar, and I like to go ahead and mix it a little bit now because they say the yeast is not supposed to make direct contact with salt, otherwise it will kill the yeast. There we go. So after the ingredients have been mixed a little bit, we can go ahead and add some salt. This is 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Then we'll add 2 eggs, which we will beat lightly. Then add 1 cup of milk that's been warmed to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The warm milk is important because it will activate the yeast. If it's not warm enough, the yeast will not be activated. If it's too hot, the yeast might get killed. So what I like to do is warm it up in the microwave for about 30 seconds. Then check the temperature with a cooking thermometer. I'm gonna go ahead and add it in here, but I'm going to leave a splash at the bottom of the cup. You'll see that when we mix, we might not need all of it. We just need enough to get all of the flour from the bottom of the bowl. So we'll have this in case we need it. Then I add 1/3 cup of condensed milk and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Then I'm gonna go ahead and attach my dough hook onto my stand mixer. But it's okay if you don't have a stand mixer. You can knead everything by hand, which I do sometimes as well. I still see some flour at the bottom of the bowl here, so I'm gonna add a little bit more milk. I ended up using the entire cup of milk. Now I'm going to add the butter. This is 3 tablespoons of softened butter. I'm going to add it a little bit at a time. Okay, so all of the butter has been incorporated. This is kind of what they call a shaggy dough. We need to knead it some more until it's smooth and elastic. In the stand mixer, it can take up to 5 to 7 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, it can take 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll show you how to know when it's done. Now you know when the bread is ready when it's smooth and elastic. You can also test it by doing the window pane test. That means when you pull the dough, it should be able to stretch far enough to where you can see light almost like a window pane without it ripping. So do you see how I am pulling the bread here? And there are some holes that are ripping through, so that means it still needs to knead a little bit more, but we are almost there. You can also do the window pane test by taking off a piece, rolling it into a ball, and then pulling it and stretching it that way. Let's see if it works with a smaller piece here. You know, some might say that this is already passing the window pane test. The fact that you can stretch it out this thin is pretty good. That means that everything has been developed. So now I'm going to take it off of the dough hook. So roll it into a nice ball. You see it's nice and smooth. Don't worry if you don't get making bread right the first time. It took me a couple tries, okay? And even now, if I don't bake bread for a while, I get it wrong sometimes because I forget how long it takes for me to knead it. Now I'm going to take some oil and put it around my bowl. And then we're going to put this dough back in here with the oil. Make sure to kind of roll it around in the oil. And that is because we're going to let the dough rise and the oil will keep it from sticking to the bowl. So this is what our dough looks like right now. You can see the oil is all over it. That's going to keep it from sticking to the bowl. Now I'm going to cover the bowl with plastic wrap. We need to let the dough rise and it needs to have all the gases trapped in there with it. Now, depending on where you live and what time of year it is, the temperature in your house, the time it takes for the dough to rise will vary. In the summertime, when it's warm outside here in North Carolina, my dough can rise in 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. But I've noticed that in the cooler weather, like in fall and winter, it's been taking about 1 to 2 hours for it to rise. You want it to double in size. So we will check on this later. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours. Let's go ahead and check on our dough. This is what the dough looks like now. You can see that it's risen. It's hard to tell from this angle, but it's about double in size. Now this is the fun part. We have to release the air, so we just go like this. Then we'll take it out and roll it. All right, let me show you how to form the pandesal. We're just going to take out the dough on a board. I like to make it into a log and then cut it into pieces from there. So first I cut it in half, and then I cut that piece in half, and then I cut each of these pieces into thirds. And then we will even everything out afterwards. Okay, I ended up dividing the dough into 15 equal pieces. If you have a scale, you are welcome to weigh them, but I just eyeball it. Now let me show you how I roll them. Okay, so this is about the size of my pandesal. What we're going to do is just roll it into a smooth ball. That means pulling the edges down and over. See how it's smooth at the top, and then at the bottom, just bring it all together and then roll it. People like to also roll it on the board itself. See how smooth it is? I'll show you again. So just take a piece of dough, bring the edges down, See, it's smooth on the top. On the bottom, it's going to look like this. So let's just twist it together and roll it. Again, you can roll it on the board itself. There we go. Now, I will say, if you want to put a filling in your pandesal, which I often do, like you can put corned beef or hot dog, now is the time to do it. All you would do is roll out your dough, make it flat, and then you would put the hot dog or filling right here. Then you would close your dough over it and then roll it up like that. So that's if you wanted to have a filling, but mine today are just going to be plain. I actually made hotdog pandesal the other day. This is the same pandesal recipe, but inside I put a hot dog. You can even put cheese or corned beef or whatever you like. It's such a nice and tasty treat. Here are some fun facts about pandesal. It comes from the Spanish culture. Spain colonized the Philippines for over 300 years, from 1565 to 1898. And there's a lot of Spanish influence in the Filipino culture, like in the language, traditions, and of course cuisine. Literally, pandesal in Spanish means salty bread, and perhaps the original Spanish pandesal was salty. But over time, Filipinos changed the recipe to the light and sweet bread that it is today. In the Philippines, pandesal is sold at bakeries all around neighborhoods. Some people have bakeries on the first floor of their house. And the prices of pandesal can range from 1 piso for a small pandesal to a few pesos each, depending on their size. And there we go, that's our last dough ball. So now what we're going to do is roll each pandesal in some breadcrumbs. And then we're going to put it on a baking sheet. Again, just take a pandesal, roll it in some breadcrumbs, and then place it on a baking sheet. There are many types of variations of pandesal, like ube pandesal with cheese, which has a deep purple color and a melty cheese inside. Also, there's pan de coco with a sweet coconut filling inside, and so many more. And there we go. They've been covered in breadcrumbs, and now we're actually gonna let it rise one more time. That means we're going to let it sit for about 45 minutes to 1 hour, and hopefully they will have grown in size. So this time I'm gonna cover it with a towel. You could use plastic wrap like earlier, but a towel works just fine. We'll check on it again in about 45 minutes to an hour, and hopefully they will have grown in size. Okay, after about 1 hour, this is what the pandesal will look like.
Now let's go ahead and put it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 18 to 20 minutes. You know it's done when the bread has puffed up and it's golden brown on the top.
Let's try our pandesal. The perfect pandesal is crusty on the outside and light and fluffy on the inside. I love the subtle sweetness from the condensed milk and vanilla extract that we added. Let me show you some of my favorite ways to eat pandesal. I like dipping it in hot chocolate. Or in the Philippines, it would be Milo. I like going classic and just adding a little bit of butter. For a yummy breakfast sandwich, I like adding Spam sometimes. You can even add a fried egg or hot dog. And have you ever tried this? Adding Pancit to your Pandesal. You should give it a try. I think my favorite way to eat it is plain when it's fresh out of the oven. What about you? What's your favorite way to eat Pandesal? Tell me in the comments. Paalam!